All right, this is my last video on mental health uh, for men. Essentially, all the models that I've said or used are easily applicable to anyone uh, in the moral sense. There's some specifics because I am a male. It makes it easier for me to delve into the kind of smaller expressions of what mental health is and how that kind of plays out in real life. Now, that all being said, what is mental health? In my first video, I kind of alluded to the fact that mental health really is the positive expression of emotional and physical health working together. Therefore, mental health then starts to do its thing. Ultimately, when we think mental health, we generally think of the mind functioning properly or working adequately. And this is a good symbolism for what it is, but realistically, mental health has a lot to do with more than just that. We might break it down into the actions, essentially, depression, anxiety, uh, all these other kind of things that it is, and we break it down that way and then categorize people in that kind of expression of challenge to mental health. However, I think it's much easier to see it in its kind of positive expression, and if it is not that, then our mental health is compromised, and therefore we should be working towards that. That makes it a lot easier, so we can be proactive in it and kind of create a positive environment before these things changed. One of the largest markers I've seen to mental health being a positive expression would be uh, a controlled emotional person, right? So we're not giving way to all the emotions and running here, running there, but realistically, we're not blocking out the emotions. When somebody becomes logical, over emotional, which is generally males in one sense, but if it even happens in ladies, especially, then we can see that something is not quite working. Something has been challenged, and we've done something to compensate, and this compensation has led to the repression of emotions, blocking out a whole, at least half of life, and this can't be a positive mental thing. See, in that way, we have the tying of emotional health being relevant to mental health. When somebody's logical, they have blocked out emotional standpoint. However, we pretty much celebrate this when it comes to business. Somebody who just makes the deal, knows to say the right thing at the right time to get this thing done, and this ultimately doesn't lead to a very positive end outcome for a human being. It might lead to amicable business, good deals, and that kind of thing. But in self care, we don't really focus on the business itself because human life is more precious to us in this perspective, and a good, sustainable business will have a human element in it of self care because humans are running the business. Where we kind of push aside the human element for the mechanical efficiency of making more money, then we also have a problem. But this is a kind of a societal pressure. Us, as soon as we leave the business, as individuals, should have the understanding and awareness to then replenish ourselves so we don't go down that road, essentially. If we compromise our way of thinking, which is our way of feeling, then we end up in a place where we're not going to be so happy internally, right? And we'll kind of be seeking this thing that can never be found, a feeling, but we're too logical to see that the feeling is in everything, but we have to release our kind of way of looking at things and perceiving stuff to even be able to experience it in a long-term way. Now, that being said, the mental health, if we take the mind side of it, is the mind is the solutionary between the physical world and the internal world. It is the one kind of coming up with a strategy of how to take on something, how to be our best, and how to kind of achieve. Now, this doesn't mean that the mind won't make shortcuts, you see, because if it is extremely emotionally important for me to get this job, and I don't see that I'm better off kind of taking a little bit more time and finding something that I really enjoy, Then we have the brain being at odds. Do I then do the thing that might give me more physical sensation of goodness? Or do I do the thing that is emotional in its kind of subconscious way of internal fulfillment? Do I do what the heart says in a way? And this becomes the battle. Well, the mind might say, well, right now I'm under a lot of pressure. This would make me feel good immediately. I will worry about tomorrow. Then the brain will make the solution that it is better to get this high paying job. Now, if we paid a little bit more attention and followed more our heart or intuition or our, let's say, deeper fulfillment, then we might see that, I really wanted to get this job to provide for my family or feel important, but the amount of hours it demands from me takes me away from my family, and therefore I don't have the emotional kind of energy at the end of the day to give to my family, so they feel that I am connected with them and they can see how important they are to me and that my job is not more important than them. And you see how it kind of gets a little bit more tricky when we do that. Ultimately, again, emotional kind of intelligence and understanding being a little bit newer thing in how we're incorporating it into the importance of life, then it's going to be very hard to know how to make that decision or when is that decision supposed to happen. And it is something that has to be kind of learned at a slower pace than life is going. So that all being said, the mental health or the mind side of it is a little bit more gray in that way of looking at it. However, the mind will only make solutions to things based on the amount of information it has available. Uh, Ultimately, this also is to say that if you're repressing things, it won't use that as information. Um, and this is where the emotions kind of come in. The emotions are the indicator to that repressed thing that we're not thinking about, that we're not seeing in the way we're viewing life. And a good example of this is like reading your favorite quote. You might read it today and it's very applicable. You read it a year from now and you get something completely different from the exact same words, a different kind of inspiration. However, the moral of what that really is always in there. So it's still a quote you enjoy until you grow past its superficial meaning. But if you go back to it and see the moral meaning, it's something that's super important to you and will help point you in the right direction. That's kind of how emotions work, and signal to the mental processing that something needs to be learnt. We have to experience something else to bring this thing out of our repressed way of dealing or looking at life. Then we have this kind of enriching feeling when it comes out and we say, oh, you know what? I've always wanted to do scuba diving. And now I know I love scuba diving because it's in water. And water reminds me of family because we always used to go swimming. And family really, to me, is playfulness with another person. Then we know playfulness is very important to us. It's something we have to kind of keep in our life and we can't push it out for any other reason. We have to keep it in there because that is what makes us feel more like us. And in that way, that figures itself out. So back to the mental understanding. So that is the mindset style of things. And then physical always is the end outcome to that. So if we have an emotional realization, oh, great, this thing's important to me, then we say, well, mentally, we have to incorporate that into our solutionary process. Now, when I'm solving, I'm putting health in the equation as opposed to the speed of getting something done into the equation. Now that health is there, I start saying, well, this is a healthy action, so let me act on that. And then I start doing healthy things because this is the way my brain is now solving stuff, and we have a physical expression of this. We can't say we really know something until we can bring it to its solutionary cause, all the way through to an action, that action then reflecting to us exactly what it is that we thought it would be, and the fulfillment then is internal, and we say, great, this is something that I want to continue because I see how important and beneficial it is to me as a complete person. So hopefully I didn't make that more confusing, but hopefully I did expand the way that you look at it, making it slightly more confusing, but showing you in reflection that there is more to know. The more that you know, the better you understand it, the better you can be for people around you, but ultimately the better you can be for yourself. And in that way, embodying self care and being radiating being of health to the others around you without putting out continuous effort in a way. So hopefully that made some sense. And